Take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
So I watched Andrew Schulz interviewing Bernie Sanders on his Flagrant podcast. If you don't know, Andrew Schulz is a comedian. He kind of comes from the right-wing Rogan sphere of comedians. Made a major fortune podcasting, and he's been going viral lately over and over again for just various ridiculous, absurd, in some cases bizarre and disgusting comments. Whether it be going back and forth with the rapper Kendrick Lamar, or saying weird things like, Democrats lose because being a Democrat makes you gay, or Republicans are cool now, Republicans are the cool ones, so just real galaxy brained stuff coming from this guy. And an interesting thing about him is that I don't think he's dumb, really. I think that he just twists himself into pretzels to come to these weird conclusions, probably because he's trying to serve an audience, or because he's trying to sort of play it in the middle. And it's a cowardly thing that I think a lot of comedians like him do. And what it leads to is these interview styles where it's very long, free form, free ranging with politicians like Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Bernie Sanders. I don't even know if this is the first time Bernie Sanders has come on here. But, there's mixed results to that. And I think some people who view themselves as in the center, that's what they want. They want to hear sort of personalized, casual conversations on both sides of the aisle. It's kind of like the Joe Rogan theory, even though Joe Rogan never had Kamala Harris on his. We don't really know whether that was his decision or hers. There's information going both ways about it. But clearly Donald Trump is more compatible with Joe Rogan's audience, with his aesthetic, with his brand, which is why he ended up there and Kamala Harris didn't. But the idea is, rather than acting like a journalist and challenging these guys on what they say, knowing your shit before you go into the conversation, instead you just talk to them, you let them say whatever they want to say, maybe some questions come up in your mind at the time, but ultimately you're just kind of poking and prodding them and getting them to say whatever they say. And so it's, I would say, for the most part, enormously irresponsible when it comes to interviewing politicians. Certainly in the case of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, but also, anybody, Bernie Sanders, there's things to criticize about him too. And I would rather see a more combative interview with any politician, with any level of power. However, I think it's significantly less malignant to have a more casual conversation with a guy like Bernie Sanders, which is what Schulz does here. And look, they have a really good discussion. I have to say that it's a good interview in the sense that they ask Bernie good questions that gets him going on his topics in a very specific way. We're used to hearing Bernie Sanders talk in broad terms. He's very good on the stump. He's good at the repetitive campaign style messaging. So seeing him in a context where he's being more detailed and specific is interesting. He's still really sharp, and I do think that it's easy to forget just how sharp his analysis is. I think part of the reason that he is such a forefront figure is because he has really sharp observations, and he's also good at whittling those observations down into really solid messaging. So before I get any more into the political dynamics here, let's just play a couple clips here. Look, I was going through this looking for clips of stuff that I wanted to talk about, and there was a lot. This is a fairly good discussion. I don't begrudge anybody who doesn't want to listen to or watch Andrew Schulz's content, but in terms of just hearing Bernie speak, it was an interesting conversation. So I'll show you a little bit of that.
I think there is a new breed of uber capitalists out there who really believe, and they write about this as well, who really believe that they are superior human beings. I'm telling you, this is the quote-unquote high IQ guys who say, look, we work hard, we're smart, we have started these businesses.
So the victor go the spoils.
Not only that, I think what, that's yes. It's a dog-eat-dog world. I made it. Yeah. You didn't make it. Hey, man, that's the way life goes. It's deeper than that. you have some writing on the right, on the far right, which really diminishes democracy, and that really the smart and the wealthy and the powerful have the right to rule. So this is not just, oh, I want a tax break. There's nothing new about that.
Yeah.
This is, we have the right. It's the divine, it used to be the divine rights of kings.
Or manifest destiny.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right. Back in the 19th century, the 1850s, I am the king. God made my family king, and sorry you're starving to death, but that's the way life goes. God told me my family rules. There was some of that mentality.
So there's something about this that's just quite interesting that I've seen lately. And it's actually not lately. There is a trend with the ultra wealthy, which is upon their death, a lot of them have decided to give away their money, right?
Some of their money.
Or some. Okay, some of the most prolific, right? And, or as they get closer to death, they're like, our goal is to give away all our money. Okay, which seems to tell me that they think that there is an issue with them having all that money. If they truly felt entitled to it, like, it seems to me it's an admission that they agree with you. They're like, it's kind of wrong that we should just keep all this in our family. We should probably not have it. When you see billionaires do that, right, or this elite class that you're talking about, do that, is there a part of you that goes, you're getting it, why don't you do that maybe 40 years earlier?
No.
Okay.
Look, these guys are very competitive. They're very smart. They're very innovative, hardworking. And I really think it's very competitive. And I think they want it all. All right. I introduced legislation to say we're going to block the sale of certain military weaponry to Israel. I got 15 Democrats to support me. I got 0 Republicans. Why do you think more Democrats didn't support me? Because if Democrats support me, they will have to take on AIPAC. You mentioned Jamal Bowman.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you're talking about.
What'd they spend, like 15 or 20 million to get him out of there? Exactly. This is up in Westchester, too.
You got it.
Okay.
Cory Bush in Missouri, St. Louis, was defeated. A woman in the state of Washington, Pramila Jayapal's sister ran. So if you want to speak out against Netanyahu's government and oppose military sales, AIPAC, which is also funded by billionaires who support both Democrats and Republicans, so we'll go after.
How can they do this effectively? Like, how can they sway a vote if the people don't support the idea?
You know how you do it?
How?
This is rather amazing. Great question. You don't talk about the issue.
Oh, you make that person so radioactive.
Right. They didn't talk. When they went after I was up in Westchester, and I will just reinforce the point both of you made. The hatred that we felt in 2016, 2020 from the Democratic establishment. I'll give you an example. We would do rallies and we have thousands of people, often young people of color coming out, working class people coming out. They were great, full of energy. Yeah. And then we'd go to Democratic Party events. And there'd be a few hundred people, mostly older, whiter, wealthier. And you saw the clash. And the establishment did not want to open the door. They hated the idea that all these people whose hands were a little bit dirty, who didn't have PhDs or weren't wealthy, imagine walking in, it's my party, man, you ain't getting in.
Yes.
We will fight you in the most ruthless ways that we can. And that's the struggle. Are they going to open the door, or are they prepared to lose elections, literally, and maintain
the status quo?
Go down with the Titanic. So
do you think you're forcing the door open? Because it seems like that's what's happening right now.
Exactly what we are trying to do. Right now, in the last month, we have enlisted some, I think the latest 7,000 people who are prepared to run for office from school board to Congress.
Wow.
Not all of them will run, but they've shown interest. There are training programs that we're undertaking with other groups right now. And by the way, a good percentage of them don't want to run as Democrats.
So Bernie is doing what he always does here, which is critiquing power in a very honest way, and in a way that is genuinely balanced, right? He's not afraid to criticize the Democratic Party because he's not really in the Democratic Party. He caucuses with them. He often votes with them, but he's not beholden to them. And it's what a lot of these comedian, podcaster, right-wing guys fancy themselves as doing, critiquing both sides. I'm just being honest, man. I'm just challenging power. But really, they don't really have the compass to do that, the internal compass. At the beginning of this, Andrew Schulz says, he intros Bernie Sanders. One of the things he says is that people respect Bernie because he doesn't do it for fame. He doesn't do it for money. He does it because it's what he believes in, and everybody knows that. And that's true. Bernie has been able to win himself that reputation as being an incredibly dedicated and consistent person. And so that's a good compass in terms of like who you're going to have on your platform to just openly espouse their ideas without challenging them vociferously. But that's not the same compass that's applied to other people that are allowed onto this platform, like Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. And so, taking the same approach to interviewing Bernie Sanders as you take to Donald Trump. So taking the same approach to interviewing Donald Trump as you take to interviewing Bernie Sanders, I think is irresponsible. I think you either should be harshly critical of both, or if you're going to talk to Bernie Sanders, you should have him on to let him spread his ideas because he is a consistent and honest person. He has demonstrated honesty. Donald Trump has not. You're telling me you think Donald Trump is not in the game for fame and money? Are you insane? Like, even aside from the presidency, that's what his whole reputation is. That's what Donald Trump is. That's why he is like such a symbol of America in such a twisted way, because he's just pure entertainment capitalism. And, so I think there is value to talking to Bernie Sanders in this way. And I think that there is significant negative value to talking to Donald Trump in this way. However, there's a lot of people in this audience of Andrew Schulz who want to hear that and are open to the idea of both of these factions of politics in America. And while I think that that's part of the problem, that people don't have a sense of urgency enough about the differences between these two sides. People equate left and right as though what the right is calling for is equivalent in any way to what like the Bernie Sanders left is calling for. The right not only is calling for mass deportations, they are actively trying to implement mass deportations. That is just a straightforwardly malicious policy. There's no way to interpret that that's not malicious. And if you're a person out there who, thinks that mass deportation is some kind of reasonable thing, that America is just in a place where we need that right now, you think that there's enough violent, miscreant criminals that are immigrants in this country just wandering the streets that we need mass deportations. Just think about what those words mean, mass deportations. That means by definition, anybody you're deporting them. And this is what they ran on. The words mass deportation appeared in their campaign. So a big part of what I want to point out here, bouncing off of what Bernie Sanders is talking about a little bit with what he's trying to do by getting people to sign up to run, potentially some of them as independents, in a way that can take up more space within the Democratic Party and ultimately take over the Democratic Party. He expertly points out how the split between the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party and the corporate, anybody from Obama to Kamala Harris wing of the Democratic Party, how that split works, and that it's essentially just the same as the inequality split in America. It's just people who want to keep the power that they have, and they know that if they let too many people into the club, if they democratize it too much, they're going to have to give up some of their power and some of their share, and they don't want to do that. And so that right there explains the dynamic of why Bernie Sanders was, not allowed to emerge as the leader that he is in the Democratic Party. He could have led the Democratic Party to a better place where some of these disastrous things wouldn't have happened, and they didn't allow that. And some people criticize me for talking about people like Schulz, people like Theo Vaughn. They criticize Bernie Sanders for going on platforms like this. And I get it. I understand why you would. Something I've been thinking about, though, lately is that your enemies exist all the time. And I mean that in the sense of like your real enemies, like people who can never be agreed with, there's no compromise that can ever be had, true racists, true bigots, the KKK, people who support and prop up the KKK, those are real enemies. And those enemies exist all the time. They have whole lives. And so even if, the KKK, for example, is chased out of the public square, they still exist. And that right there is the reason we're at where we're at today, is because a lot of those people went back to their little corners and they plotted for how they were going to take over America. And it didn't seem likely until it started to seem likely, until the right leader came along. And so I'm not just talking about them, though. I'm also talking about masses of people who might be misguided politically, might be vaguely racist or whatever, but they're more so just like affiliated with those enemies of humanity, I would call them, more so than they are that. And my point being that those people don't go away either when you're not looking at them. They exist all the time. And I think, while that sounds like obvious, it's something that I think we miss a little bit on the left and the Democratic Party as well. The idea that, like, people don't go away just because you ignore them or just because you think they have deplorable beliefs that you don't want to work through or contend with or acknowledge. And we've tried various versions of all of those things, and it hasn't worked. Those people have only gained power because they have cohorted with each other on the basis of being whatever, ostracized. And I don't really care about that. I don't care about people feeling like victims of wokeness or whatever. I'm not trying to appeal to people like that. But what I'm trying to do is imagine a changed political situation in the future. Because this is what the right did when they were completely out of power, and when their political and social perspectives were completely unpopular and largely discredited amongst a lot of the relevant public, the active voters and whatnot. And that's no longer the situation. They successfully strategized, whether it's big money or focusing in on racism and tying together threads of, Gamergate and other online extremists to create a powerful, hateful movement. However you want to look at it, they successfully created a strategy to take over in explicit terms. Because while some form of white supremacy or imperialism has always been at the controls in America, it's a more explicit version of white nationalism than has been at the controls in many years. And part of the reason for that is because while we were trying to ignore the fact that some people have deeply confused and deeply bigoted views and move on to a different form of politics, the right was actively seizing on those people as an opportunity to gain political power. And so when it comes to your enemies and them existing all the time, you either need to know what they're up to, or you need to study what it is that is motivating the broader basis of power that are electing these people. And so that's my purpose in, watching Bernie Sanders on Andrew Schulz, is that one way or the other, Andrew Schulz speaks to a large amount of people who do have political sway over America. And people like Andrew Schulz do have political sway over America. His isn't as big as like Joe Rogan's, but it's all links in the same chain. And while I'm not exactly a fan of compromising my beliefs to organize with people on the basis of kumbaya or whatever, I'm also trying to recognize that a lot of those people who might be part of negative movements, who might have casually voted for Trump out of ignorance or whatever because Trump breaks through the veil of political understanding that most people have in the same way that Bernie Sanders breaks through, those people are going to live their entire lives out for the most part. They're still going to be around regardless of what happens. Who knows what the fuck's going to happen in America in the next 5 to 10 years. But for the most part, the people that make up this country are going to continue being there, continue doing what they do. Some of them are going to change their minds. Some of them aren't. And at the end, we got to strategize based on that and try to imagine a political coalition that is going to carry us to a better place. And so that's why I think it's useful to study what it is that Bernie Sanders is saying to the audience of Andrew Schulz, and the things that Andrew Schulz might say and people like him might say, in order to make appeals to a more left-leaning audience. Because again, I'm not really interested in like seeking consensus with people like that, but whatever the movement is that is going to carry America to a better place, whether it's like a revolution or, a significant electoral victory of somebody like Bernie Sanders or better, it's going to have to include a lot of people. It's going to have to be a sweeping movement. It's not enough to just have the people who already agree with left-wing positions right now. That's not going to do it, no matter what form of change you're looking for. And so it's not about, thinking Andrew Schulz is fine or compromising about him. It's about studying what he's saying that works. It's about studying what Bernie Sanders is saying that works. It's about studying what Trump is saying that works. And trying to identify the portions of those audiences and voter bases that can be swayed in a more positive direction. And, not abandoning the left, not abandoning trans people, not abandoning minorities to that end, but ultimately recrafting a political language that can push the conversation forward and push us past some of these towering oligarchic powers. And so that's what Bernie Sanders is trying to do here. With his, with the oligarchy rhetoric and trying to sort of create a new movement that eschews the Democratic Party. And so we'll see how that goes. But ultimately, we got to take notes on all of this stuff if we want there to be any hope of a better politic in America at any point in the future, no matter what version of that it is that you're looking for. There is a lot that we as leftists don't understand about what it takes to communicate to Americans. And if nothing else, we need to be open-minded about that. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to support this channel. I'm posting different kinds of stuff there, like podcasts that don't make it to the main channel, book reviews, movie reviews, also music. If you like the music that plays in the back of these podcasts, all that's going to be posted there, as well as my EPs. I just dropped a new EP called Dead Internet Theory, which is now available on all platforms, but it was available first for members only. So if you want early access to future music and projects like that, become a member. And if there's other stuff that you would like to see as members only content, let me know and we'll figure some things out.